Thank you for having me. I couldn't join the whole 2 days because all of a sudden my wife got pregnant, and then I needed to. So, long story. I'm the dad. Don't worry. So we're. This is pretty much history in the making, right? It's the first Agile Meets Architecture conference, isn't it? That's big, guys. That's really big. So I think as the closing keynote, I want to have you guys be celebrated just a little bit, right? So not yet. No. Stop. I want to read the names first, right? And please raise your arm when I read out your name. We have Diana. Yeah? Okay. Next organizer, my sister, Aino. Then we have Jan. I don't know if that's how you say. That's how you say it in Danish, at least, right? And so then we have Michael. Yeah. And finally, we have Jörg. Thank you very much for doing this.
Brilliant, thank you.
And I just want to know, so how many people here are architects? Wow, okay. How many people are developers? Okay, yeah. So some of you are both. You're not just like PowerPoint architects or something like that, right? You're actual developers, yeah, good, great. So what I do is Agile comic strips, right? Before we get to it, this is the QR code for Slido. If you want to ask any questions, just give you 10 seconds for this. We'll take the questions in the end. So do scan that one if you would like. And let's jump into it. I'll introduce myself in just a couple of minutes. So, how many people know Conway's Law? I bet someone has mentioned this last couple of days, right? So I'm not even gonna talk too much about it, right? But it is about organizations being limited to produce designs that kind of resemble or are pretty identical their communication structures, right? So you have a lot of front-end developers sitting together, back-end, business analysts, DBAs. They're going to get some sort of in-tier architecture, right? So if Conway's Law is actually true, right? And management drives the structuring of organizations, then management designs our software architecture. It all makes sense now, doesn't it? Huh? Why we have so many dependencies, no flow, all of this stuff. So I'm going to do two things today that you're never supposed to do. I'm going to read from the screen. Yeah, I don't know all our strips yet. And I use a font called Comic Sans. Comic Sans, something like that. Yeah? You're only supposed to do that in Denmark, at least, if you're a school teacher, or if you make comic strips. So this is me. This is a really cool picture from back in the days when I used to do some freestyle rapping, but that's a whole different show. I have a professional mission in life, I figured out. It is to expose what happens when Agile meets reality. And the way I do it with my partner Mikkel is through comic strips. I'm going to show you some of them today. I'm the writer at this thing we got going on. Mikkel is a UXer, so he can kind of turn my twisted thoughts into something other people understand. I have a real job as well, as Aino mentioned, an enterprise agile coach. And then I know you architects, especially those who can code, are like, that's not a real job, but it is, okay? It is. It is. I've held different agile roles since 2010. Yeah? Industry experience in these different industries. Background as MSc in software engineering. So I've never been actually paid to code. So I'm feeling kind of a bit like an imposter here, right? But it makes it easier for me to kind of challenge the developers at least. So we make these comic strips. That's the URL. We're very proud of having 50,000 almost hardworking, full-time professional followers, right? As you know, it equals around 50 million teenagers on TikTok. So that's a huge number, right? We're very proud. Last year we published a book. We had Kent Beck and Dave Snowden write the foreword, so we're very proud of that. And another book coming up. John Smart is writing the foreword for that one. So you can pre-order if you like, and you can buy the old book here if you like as well. It's really good. Okay, so we have a mission with this whole comic strip stuff, right? We want more people to laugh, reflect, and improve their agile ways. When you go to conferences, there are so many success stories, right? People fly around the globe just to tell their damn success stories. Let's talk about what doesn't work instead, right? I believe that's where we can learn the most, right? So, comic strips, I believe, can connect agile and architecture. That's what we're talking about today, right? By depicting what fails in agile transformations, including the architecture, right? So I'm going to go through that. I'm going to talk about the architect role, about management, and the other agile roles, and the developer role as well, right? So that's what we're going to walk through now. So here's the architect, right? And he's like the most human of all developers, right? The one who can actually talk to most people, but kind of still find themselves in a struggle and balancing business needs and technical needs and requirements. And in reality, they just want to be left alone to dream, right? It's you guys. So here's a Scrum Master talking to his team. I'm so happy that both management and our customers understand the importance of working agile when our domain is so complex. Right? Yes, moving away from the enormous requirement specification phase up front has really helped us adapt as we get wiser. That's kind of the agile thing, right? Here's Alan. Hi guys, hi Alan, he's the architect. Where you been the last couple of weeks? At home making our target architecture. Yeah. So once upon a time, it was kind of a success, right? If you made this target architecture, you actually lived up to it, right? Just like we did with the requirements. But now we need to learn that, the success is being able to adapt, to evolve. I guess another word you heard quite a lot of times the last couple of days, right? So the only truth there is today is that the world is changing. So we need not just the business needs, but the technical needs to follow as well. And we cannot be agile if the architecture doesn't follow. That's pretty obvious, right? So what we want to avoid is this. Yeah? This is you guys sitting up in the ivory tower. What we want is these target architecture, right, or the emerging architecture, and we'll get back to that, to be made together with the teams and the developers, right? Want to identify the emergent design based on the business needs, right? Not anywhere in an ivory tower, but down with all the tiny Scrum teams or whatever teams there are, right? So here's Alan, and he read a book, I heard, right? So he's talking about it. Today, the application architecture should not be defined up front, but emerge over time in accordance with the desired target state. It's about creating an evolvable architecture that can be changed incrementally as we get wiser on the customer needs and our technical possibilities. And then a developer, of course, asks, so what does all of that mean in practice for us developers when we code our applications? I'm waiting for the answer to emerge. So it can get a bit abstract, right? Once in a while, and I'm not going to try to explain you like really technically what it means, because I'm not that technical anymore, at least. But what we do need to talk about is that we have an intentional architecture that can change, right? So this intentional architecture is basically the target architecture, right? And then we have the fitness functions. Did you hear about fitness functions? Yes, great. And the fitness functions kind of show us how it goes with the desired characteristics, right, of this intentional architecture. Then we have something called the emergent design, which I'm still not really grabbing the hold of what that really is, but it's the technical basis we need to have. So, loose coupling, being able to change the intentional architecture to whatever new state or type of architecture we need is how I understand it, right? But what that means in code, we'll see if we can see later. So let's talk about fitness functions. Alan has really read a good book, right? So he's continuing here. Fitness functions provide an objective integrity assessment of the desired characteristics of our architecture, such as how well we meet our non-functional requirements, our level of cyclomatic complexity, or our degree of modular coupling, right? So they're manual or automatic checks that verify how evolutionary our architecture is through tests or metrics. Each fitness function represents each requirement for architecture, right? I think you learned that as well, right? So later, reality hits. Developer says, oh, the performance fitness function shows that our response time is too high, but the security fitness function is too low. We need better encryption, right? And our cyclomatic complexity is through the roof. Which one should we address? Alan is jumping. Yeah. So, as we also heard in Rebecca's talk yesterday, start by identifying the fitness functions that represent the desired characteristics of your architecture, right? And they can point in different directions, of course, but you can weigh them. Look at them as a whole, then there must be something that's more important than the others, right? And it's typically some sort of architect who does this. I think that's what you call in your books the system-wide fitness functions, right? Looking at it as a whole in opposite directions, but which one has the biggest weight? Maybe it is security or compliance. It often is in the financial industry, at least, right? So let's talk a bit about the evolvable architecture as well. Yeah, it gets a bit technical now. The key to keeping up with our dynamic surrounding is building evolvability into our architecture. And this is an example from Building Evolutionary Architecture by Neil Ford and Rebecca Parson and Pat Cure, right? So it's a really cool example, so we made a strip out of it. Yeah. For example, here's a service for rating a product using stars. Now, the team decides to support half stars, right? Until now, they supported full stars. A new column in the database handles whether a rating has an additional half star, right? Maybe you've seen this example before. The new toggle router on top enables the service to return whichever format is requested, using routing, which one should be returned, as the evolutionary mechanism. And then, when the last service that's dependent on this service stops using whole star ratings, then you can kind of cut it away, right? Then there's only the half-star functionality left. And then a developer asks, what if we want to evolve the service to only support free text reviews instead of stars? That would require changing the database schema, which we're not allowed to. So, yeah, good luck with that, right? So additive changes, apparently, is pretty easy. And if you want to support more complex changes, I don't have the answer for that. But I do recommend that you read the book, Refactoring Databases, Scott Ambler and Pramod Satterjee, right? Where they talk about database design, evolutionary database design, and evolving schemas, right? So I think it's a forward compatibility, backwards compatibility, stuff like that. Yeah? So what we need to remember here is, what does evolutionary mean? I hope you didn't get too many different definitions of it. But I like the one in your book, actually, which I mentioned right before, which is intentionally guided towards being fit for purpose and can survive the ever-changing environment. If you can have architectures that live up to that, they're evolutionary, right? Much easier said than done. We need to talk about coupling as well. And hold your horses. So despite us having a microservice architecture, Alan continues. Apparently, he's not even read a book. He's been on a course as well. Coupling is still happening because of reuse of code and lack of safeguards. So to increase our focus on decoupling, going forward, all new services must be built on different technology stacks. So you can't reuse each other's code, right? That's one way of doing it. So the product owner comes by. There's a huge opportunity to attract new big customers to the trading platform if we can help the trading team implement some new features next sprint. It's an opportunity to be agile. Our services are built on Ruby and Rails and MySQL, and there's Java and Oracle, so we can't. Right. So they apparently have no way of figuring out how to do this. Right? What we want to avoid is this accidental coupling. And forcing people to use different technology is one way, right? And I think to kind of figure out what the right approach for this is, you need to be looking much more into this than I can actually give you advice on. But what I can tell you is something called RDD. And this is fun. Alan continues. We need to build system-wide fitness functions, evolutionary database designs with evolving schemas, and data so we can create an emergent and evolvable architecture. But why, the developer asks, Never ask why. Because we're going to take a new approach to our development practices. Oh, what new approach? RDD. And what does that stand for? Resume-driven development. Right? So I'm going to read something aloud from rdd.io, which is kind of a manifest, right? Specific technologies over working solutions. Yeah? Hiring buzzwords over proven track records. Creative job titles over technical experience. Reacting to trends over more pragmatic options. This is what you need to be looking out for, right, as architects. Don't fall into the RDD trap. So how can we help the architects, right? Urge them to co-create the target architecture with the teams. So as an architect, is that a job or a competency that all developers have? Right? I think it's a competency and accountability that all developers should have, but maybe you're not there yet. Right? Evolutionary architecture consists of incremental change, fitness functions, and appropriate coupling. And now the company wants to be agile. So the boss buys a lot of boxes here, right? In those boxes, you have Scrum t-shirts, and they're one size fits all. Some of the boxes even have safe t-shirts, and they're really tight. So the next thing they do is hire some external consultants. We're with the consultancy firm Agile BS, and here's our plan. Okay, you guys are laughing. Agile Business Solutions. Okay, so and here's our plan for your agile transformation. First, to really understand your organization, we'll observe and analyze your department for some time. Based on the analysis, we'll design and describe the transformation effort. Following, we'll implement the new agile processes. Lastly, we'll test how the transformation works and integrate it with current processes across the organization. We expect the full transformation to take a couple of years. They are a bit slow, aren't they? So this is what we see, right? Taking a waterfall approach to going agile. That's just weird, right? What I think you should do instead, unless it's too late, right, is to kind of slice a product or a product line or a value stream, something representative of the lessons learned you'll have when you go agile. Instead of just doing it in IT or digital, because that's where it's easiest, right, and then you're going to have external dependencies, slice the pilot, the agile pilot, across a value stream, right? That's where you're going to accelerate learning. That's what agile is all about, right? Don't do this. Guys, come on. Any consultants here? Like independent consultants-ish? I'm going to get back to you guys. So, they continue business solutions. Besides higher customer satisfaction, going agile generally also increases employee engagement. Yes, becoming part of self-managing teams is what will really make a difference. And since it's on a PowerPoint, it must be true, of course, right? Developer asks, well, we just want to code. Just tell us what to do and we'll figure out how. No. You're empowered and self-managing now. You can't waste your time coding, right? So, of course, if you're having your waterfall meetings and you're involving developers in the status meeting and budget meetings and reporting meetings, then they're going to drown in meetings, right? In my view, the Scrum events should be enough. They're all about inspecting and adapting, right? So why do they need other meetings? There could be some coordination or some sort of crazy idea about converting story points to hours, but let someone outside the team do stuff like that, okay? Someone like this guy, for instance. This is a manager. He has a plan. It's going to fail. I want you to work on this, the manager says to the Scrum team. And the developer, he gets it. So he says, it's not really agile for a manager to tell us what to work on. He's back. I want you to work on this right away. You're getting up to speed. So being a product owner is, of course, a full-time job. There could be some awkward mechanisms, dynamics going on if your boss is your PO, depending on the culture and so on. Does the team actually challenge the PO's ordering of the backlog? Yes or no? Is that possible if he can actually fire me? Don't let the boss be a product owner, but that's what we see, right? When companies go agile initially, some sort of line management function has the product accountability, so they become the product owner. It's a full-time job. You need to look outwards towards the world and inwards towards the team as a product owner. How can you do that and still have one-to-ones with 15 people, right? Here's another manager. Come on, work faster. Can I have a word with you? The very intelligent internal Agile coach asks her. He says, when we work Agile, we don't pressure our teams to run faster. It's not sustainable, motivational, nor the management approach that we want. Okay, instead we want to deliver more value frequently to the customer, right? Come on, team, add more value at a goal. So taking this tailorist approach to going Agile doesn't work either, right? So what we need to learn, what we need to teach our management layer is that 100% utilization is not what we want to go for, right? They're not supposed to look busy, because they're not busy just because they look busy, right? So teams shouldn't plan for more than, 70 or 80% of their capacity, however they measure that. So there's room for, doing something else than you expected. If you don't have that wiggle room, then it's going to clog up, right? All sorts of theory proves this. But we need to teach this to management as well. So, psychological safety. These consultants, they know a lot, right? So the lack of psychological safety is detrimental to a successful Agile transformation. Therefore, dear managers, no one should be punished for errors or questions in the pursuit of continuous improvement or higher performance. And this manager gets it, right? So later, she talks to her team. So I want you to know that it's totally fine to voice your opinions, whatever they are. Okay, a developer says, then I don't see how line management adds any value to our Agile ways of working. So pack your things, right? So apparently not much psychological safety here. So what we need to be aware of is not just the lack of psychological safety upwards in the organization, but also to the sides, right? Being professionally afraid of colleagues happens, right? We need to address that as well. You can start doing some sort of a self-assessment. What other assessment can you do of psychological safety, right? I don't know. But start self-assessing, having teams self-assess this. And management wants to see how it goes with the Agile transformation or journey or whatever you want to call acceleration is also a thing, right? And they need some indicators. So here are some very popular ones, but they all suck. Number of teams involved in our scaled Agile setup. The more teams involved, the better, right? No. It only tells you how many dependencies you have. The number of certified colleagues. No. This doesn't tell you how good you are at being Agile. This tells you how much money you spent. Team's velocity comparison. This is really bad, right? First of all, the velocity is for the team. The sprint velocity is only for the team. It talks about how much, complexity or how much have they delivered per time unit, like story points or stories per sprint. It's for the Scrum Masters to look at how it fluctuates and improve stuff, and for the product owner to maybe do some forecasting together with the team. It's not for anyone outside the team, right? Especially not some sort of manager who converts it into hours, right? Average number of teams per Scrum Master. If we're really agile, Scrum Masters can have 4 teams. No. If you're not busy as a Scrum Master with your team, then spend your time on the organization, right? Don't take in 4 teams. This still happens. Just make sure it happens outside the team. The team should only worry about their own velocity for their own sake. Nothing with budgets as such, right? Predictability. This is also a popular one. So if you're 100% if you're 100% predictable, do you need to be agile? I don't know. Apparently you can be 100% agile. So what I think are better indicators is NPS, Net Promoter Score, so how happy are the customers with the products that we deliver? eNPS, how happy are our employees with working here? And then maybe lead time, right? From an idea to value delivery and consumption, adoption. Take a look at that. It's not about running faster and coding faster. It's about waiting less. Yeah? Not about running faster, but waiting less. So, here's a manager's manager. It's going really well with our Agile initiative. We can all be proud. We now have Scrum and Kanban teams running as Agile release trains, but shouldn't we change as managers as well? One of his subordinates asks him, you've misunderstood something. Agile is all about teams. Since we're not part of teams, it's got nothing to do with us. Now on to something important, the annual budgeting process. Yeah? So this kind of sets the bar for how agile you can be, right? If everything is locked in the beginning of the year, then you can't really move. You cannot really adapt based on customer needs, right? So if you can do that successfully, stop doing agile stuff. Just follow the plan if that's really the truth, right? It's going to make people much more happy than if you try to be agile in such a context. Value stream funding, that's actually something I like from the scaled way of working, or wherever it comes from, right? Cost-based funding, product funding, stuff like that. Things I think beyond budgeting is really good. Look into that. So this is the middle manager, and he or she, I don't know, is not happy because his boss wants him to get in control, and his teams want him to empower them, right? So who has the answer for how to manage this, right? There's no golden answer on what the role should be in a specific organization, but have a talk about this. Let's talk about this middle layer, right? The frozen middle, as some people also call it, right? So how can we help management? Well, understand their actual reason for going agile. Some sort of management person must have bought into going agile. What's the actual reason? Is to get better at meeting the iron triangle? That's a real bad reason, right? Help management understand what empowerment really means. It can actually be different from one team to another. Does the PO have the capabilities to actually be product accountable? Or do you need someone else to do it? Clarify the responsibility split between management and the agile roles. For instance, if there's a conflict in your team, is it the Scrum Master or the manager, the people manager who manages this? I know what the Scrum Guide says, right? But figure out what makes sense. It requires you to have really good Scrum Masters, which we'll get back to as well. And believe it or not, management are actually here to help. Someone wrote in my slides. Okay. Let's move on to the Scrum Master. Any Scrum Masters here? Oh, 2 of them. Yes. 3, 4. No, only 3. So what happens when companies go agile initially is that they take all the project managers and then they know something's going to happen, right? They put them in a room and they ask them, so, dear project managers, do you like products or do you like people? Right? And the ones who like product maybe become product owners, and the people who think they like people become Scrum Masters. And then this happens. As the start of our Scrum journey, the Scrum Master says, we'll kick off today with this new morning meeting called a daily Scrum. John, why don't you start? And John actually gets it. So, as our sprint goal is to create a service for retrieving historical data, I'm setting up a microservice template, but I'm stuck because, wait. Scrum Master stops him. I would like you to share how many hours you spent on that story so far and how many hours are remaining. I don't think we're supposed to, don't worry, as long as we're standing up, we're doing it right. Huh? Yeah? So the purpose of this daily Scrum, right, is to inspect the plan we made, right? Is there anything we need to change to the sprint plan in order to meet the sprint goal? Right? Are there any impediments? It's about inspecting the plan, not so much about talking about budgeting and progress in hours and crazy stuff like that. So there's another manager talking to a Scrum Master. Congrats with your new Scrum Master certification. How's it going with your team? The new Scrum Master's happy. Pretty good, actually. Even though we never have a sprint goal, the PO doesn't want sprint reviews, and the developers hate doing sprint retrospectives. I really feel we're getting into the agile spirit. So what are you doing? We agreed to call it Kanban. A piece of advice here, if Scrum is difficult, just go do Kanban. It's much easier. You don't even have to plan or anything, right? That was a joke. So in Kanban, you pull in work when you have capacity, right? So if you're in an operations-heavy world where you can't even lock down the scope for 2 weeks, maybe Kanban could be the right thing. But don't do it because Scrum is difficult. We see many teams who do Kanban because Scrum is so damn difficult, and it is. So we need this type of Scrum Masters. This is what the team needs, right? It could be a lady, of course, as well, but someone like this. He's been to war. Maybe he was even an architect back in the days. I don't know. So he's tried it before. But what type of Scrum Master does management hire? This guy. Straight out of school. So my point here is that the Scrum Master role is a senior role, right? You're very involved with the teams, the developers, the product owner, the organization. It's not just about calling in for meetings. It's about facilitating, right? It's about psychology, change management, mentoring, coaching, all of that stuff. It's really advanced stuff, right? And it's all about people. So how can you do that for 4 teams? And what we see, what I think we see in Denmark is that this role is viewed as an entry-level role sometimes, right? You're nodding, thank you. It's a senior role. So how can we help Scrum Masters? Let's start educating our organization on the different stances of Scrum Masters, right? Empower these Scrum Masters to look beyond their own team. They have a lot of time because they have a mature team. Invest time in the organization. If Scrum Masters can go across teams, then we don't need Agile Coaches. Yeah, Scrum Masters are Agile Coaches. Then maybe I can do this all day or something. I don't know what I should do. I'm an Agile Coach. A potential split that we're experimenting with is that it's actually the Scrum Master who develops the teams and individuals, so has these development talks, the one-to-ones. And then the line manager's role is actually to increase the span of influence of the Scrum Master so the point above is possible. Right? Political battles, recruiting the right people, and all that stuff. Because the Scrum Masters are close to the teams. Yeah. Moving on to developers. So here's a developer visiting the doctor. So, how can I help, the doctor says. It hurts when I turn my head. And how long has this been going on? Well, for the last couple of weeks, I think. Did anything significant happen that could have caused it? Yeah, the only other COBOL developer quit. And for those who don't get it, this is a bottleneck. The managers get it as well now. So, this is a risk, right? This is a risk. Before this happens, a Scrum Master at least should have identified it and done something about it. Social programming, pair programming, mob programming can actually be fun, right? But the question is, how to find someone who wants to learn COBOL, right? What we want to create is an environment where these developers, whatever specialty they have, where they actually talk to real people that use their products, right? So it's just about walking down the stairs and talking to the end user. If they're internal or external, setting up a call, go visiting them. But sometimes in our organizations, that's a bit difficult because they look like this. And how do you get to the end user even, right? And sometimes the developers are really afraid of talking to end users. Some developers should not talk to end users. You all know who it is, right? You know who it is. Of course, none of you. Or maybe you, I think you should. But it's about creating an environment, because maybe the end users are actually afraid of talking to developers, right? This can actually free up time for the UXer and the product owner and so on to actually think strategically. So, talk about bottleneck. A manager talks to a platform team, right? Too often, our other teams are dependent on you guys implementing changes in your platform before they can deliver their features. Your team is a bottleneck. Therefore, we'll disperse you all out into the other teams so your capabilities will be built into all the teams, and the dependencies will disappear. Huh? Who thought of that? Later, so how's it going with not waiting for the platform team? Well, the Scrum Master says, now the bottleneck is within our team. Yeah? So you can disperse these people into the teams, but if some sort of knowledge sharing is not facilitated, then they're going to have, single people silos within the teams, right? We don't like that. It inhibits flow. So how can we help our developers? Free them from as many meetings as possible. Educate our organization on what meetings are actually important for developers to participate in. And the Scrum events, right? When you inspect, that's when you get feedback, that's where I think they should be involved. Urge them to share knowledge through these social programming things. Enable them to go talk to end users. Yeah? This is a product owner. These product owners, they're really sad, aren't they? Right? This guy is sad because he doesn't even have a product. So, it's so great to have someone from the business take up the PO role, the Scrum Master says. The PO is happy. I'm also really happy to get closer to you guys. It's all about bridging the gap between the business and you engineers so we can become one team. Great, let's get started. The developer has a question, of course. Should we prepare our backend for future vertical scaling, or should our focus rather be on normalizing the data for improving the performance? Yeah, and we're missing some non-functional requirements. What the business PO hears is this. Yeah. Yeah. So we need to help our developers speak real human languages, right? What are the implications of the NFRs not being met? What does it mean for the end users? A lousy experience of some sort, compliance not being met. Okay, compliance tasks are going to be delivered, but other types of non-functional requirements. So a developer talks to his PO. It seems that we can only deliver one of the 2 stories we expected this sprint. Should we just follow the backlog priority and take the top one? Let me get back to you on that, the PO says. He asks his boss, should we prioritize this story or that story? Let me get back to you on that. So he talks to his boss, should we prioritize this story? What's the story? Reach the level of ignorance, right? He goes back to the developer, no, please take the next one in the backlog. Okay, how come? Let me get back to you on that. So, in my eyes, the product owner role is the most vital one to enable agility with teams. Right? Empowered product owners can steer the teams in the right direction, together with the developers and with the end users and customers. Right? But if they're not empowered to take decisions without going through a lot of people, then it's going to inhibit flow. It's going to take quite a long time. So here's the customer talking to a PO. So could you add a view of the historical data, of the historical performance to the application? Great suggestion. Let me talk to my immediate internal stakeholder group and get back to you. And here it is. It looks galactically big, doesn't it? This is at least how I felt when I was a PO at Vestas with the wind turbines. It's like a huge company by Danish standards, at least. There were so many people to talk to. But trust me, surprisingly, many of these guys are actually okay with an email, right? So it's about categorizing them. There are different tools for stakeholder management, right? Figuring out who do you need to proactively communicate to. It's not all of them, right? Maybe a couple of them. But what I avoid is this. Product owner is happy, shiny stuff on top of the boat, right? Developers are pretty busy. So this is, what happens if you do not build in quality into your work. And then you even cannot prioritize enablers, right? To get stuff fixed because there's no budget for it. Who's going to pay for it? No one's going to pay for enablers. So it's all about building it in. And this picture actually resonates with a lot of people because it apparently, in many companies, this is how their software products look, right? Let's do something about it. And you as architects have a big role in this, right? So how can you help your POs? Educate non-technical POs on the consequences of technical debt. You guys should be experts on this. Urge developers to speak to end users and let the PO be the only CEO. I know you guys can't do that. There's only one CEO, and that's the CEO. But let's see how much we can empower the product owner. So I know you look like I need to stop. Do I need to stop now? But I'm the last one, right? So I don't care. So here's an internal Agile coach. Based on my observations, interviews, and metadata from deployment pipelines from numerous teams, I strongly suggest that we invest in removing our dependencies to accelerate our team's delivery of value. Management says, you're too ideological. That might work in theory, but this is real life. Here comes an external consultant. You have many dependencies you need safe. Take our money. So we need to kind of think about what are we doing here. It doesn't have to be safe. It could be less or Nexus, Scrum and Scale, whatever scaling framework you have. Have a think about whether it's treating the symptoms or actually removing the root causes. Why do you even have dependencies? Why do you need the whole enterprise to be agile? Why do you need everyone to work in the same cadence? Is it because you have dependencies? Often it is, right? So let's see what we can do about these dependencies. PI planning is really great, or big room planning, or whatever you want to call it. I'm finished in 2 minutes. It gets all the teams together and we'll be able to map dependencies between the teams on a program board. Later, the manager comes by. Hi, how's the planning going? Pretty good, the developers say. It's so great to align all the dependencies. We've been needing this overview for ages. And here it is. So, right. And this is, how many have been to a PI planning or big room planning? Yeah. In the beginning, this is how it can look. There are even dependencies to the plant, right, and the lamp. And as we go from one PI to another, program increment to another, we see less and less of the red lines. Many of the internal dependencies become external. And then there's something systemic to run after, right? Why do we need data warehouse to sit over in the other end of the company? And why do we need to have a dependency to those guys? There could be some security reasons for that. But let's look into how we can build the broad skills of the teams, right? And what we want to avoid, and what you should also want to avoid as architects, is the following. We have an organization. We zoom in a bit. Oh, there's an island, I think. This is where they're agile. The happy agile island, right? We don't want these isolated islands of agility. I think we don't want them. There are other theories who actually encourage this. But I think this is a real bad pilot, right? Let's make a representative pilot across the organization. So, second to last slide. Reasons organizations go agile, and this is a real scientific, survey I did. About a third did it because their competitors do. Another third to better meet the budget, timeline, and scope. That's never going to happen, right? That's never going to happen in development. But half, double, don't even get me started on that. To full skilled people to come work for them. We have empowered agile teams. Who doesn't want to work here? And the reason I hope gets bigger is to increase the organization's value add through empowered teams that adapt. This means the architecture needs to support teams being able to adapt their products, right? And that's where evolutionary architecture comes into the picture, evolvable architecture. So let's remember that using Scrum to become agile is a bit like using a scale to lose weight, and I tried that. It doesn't really work, right? It only shows you how bad it is. You need to change your habits. For instance, why do you have so many blocked tasks? What are those? Are they dependencies or what? Right? So it's going to show you. It's a mirror of how little agile you are if you want to be agile, right? So, summary. In order to be agile, the architecture needs to be evolutionary. We cannot do it if the technical foundation doesn't follow, right? Articulate what fails. Could be technical failing, but at least start talking about what doesn't work instead of success stories. In my eyes, being an architect is a competency and an accountability that all developers should have. Yeah? Of course, we'll make mistakes, but talk about them, laugh at them, and hopefully you can also learn from them. I do it through comic strips. You guys can do it in whatever form you like. Thank you for your attention. This is a QR code. If you scan it, it actually puts a discount voucher into your basket, and then you can buy a book if you want. Oh, do we also have questions?
Yeah, we have one question, but I think it's a very good question. I mean, of course, all the questions are good questions, but does it improve or does it hurt your working relationships that people know they can always end up in a comic?
That's a real good question. I think, luckily, the mentality we have in Denmark and the Nordics is that you're actually kind of expected to challenge authorities, right? You're expected to challenge decisions. So I can get fired for not challenging, right? In other cultures, you can get fired for challenging authorities. So luckily, and I guess it's not a coincidence that this came out of Denmark, right? But I think they're a bit afraid, maybe, I hope. But I think it gives you a great dynamic. People are commenting, am I going to end up in a script? Well, maybe you are, who knows? Respect me.
I haven't seen myself yet.
No? I have.
Yeah, I have the same with my book about anti-patterns. People ask me, is that me? And sometimes it is.
Yes.
But, yeah. So, are there any other questions? Then you should put them in here.
Can they shout it out also? Or?
No, they have to put it.
That's the process. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
We're an Agile conference, right? So, if you don't want to shout anything out, let's thank Luxshan again, and then you can talk to him afterwards.
Thank you.